welcome to the Sci-AI podcast. This is episode number 2, and it is my honor and privilege to bring to you all one of the greatest legends of the AI research field, Dr. Michael Wu. Michael has been a great researcher in this field. I've followed him for a long time. He has done a lot of speaking engagements all over the world and has been part of many articles and books all these years. He's now a chief strategist of AI at PROS, and it is my honor to bring him on this podcast. So let's go forward and ask him some really cool questions. Thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. All right, cool. So the first question I have in mind is that as per your experience, what is your opinion on the current AI research? And what do you think? Do you think that in the future AI is going to infiltrate all of our lives, in every part of our lives? How will we be impacted due to AI?
Okay, so first, I think in terms of like the current research, I think certainly from the academic side, to my kind of liking is that there's probably a little bit more leaning toward the algorithmic or theoretical side of things. I think that's the nature of most academia. Right. And it's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's more, it's just that there's too much lean to that theory and algorithmic side. And I think there need to be more research on domain-specific applications. I think that would address a lot of the, I would say, concerns that we have today about AI. Today there's lots of, I would say, ethical concerns, like privacy concerns and all that, right? I think that, and those concerns arise because we're trying to apply AI in a domain that was not, where it's not kind of discovered. We're trying to use AI in, I don't know, for policing or something, right? So right. Something crazy where AI wasn't actually created in those domains, right? So that's why those things those concerns arise, right? I mean, but if we have more research on those specific domain, right, those concerns will probably be addressed much earlier.
So you're saying AI regulations are more important and creating regulations around AI and its domain is more important?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the regulation will be domain specific, right? I mean, you will have regulation in the medical or financial domain, how you use AI, right? I think all the regulation will be domain specific regardless, right? But I think the AI is invented and kind of created and built at least from the theoretical and algorithmic side outside of those domains, right? And without any context of those domains. So when we try to apply it to those domains, those, issues arise, right? So I think that, there need to be, I think a lot of academics like to focus on the theoretical side, which is not a bad thing, but I think that, that's why, those concerns are not being addressed, right? Yeah. So I think you also asked, so will AI is going to infiltrate our life?
Yes.
And I would most certainly say that that's definitely yes, that it will be very pervasive and be every part of our life, in terms of which sector is going to be mostly impacted by by AI. I would say that the sector, the industry that's going to be most, I would say, pervasively infiltrated by AI is the one that's probably going to have lots of data, right? Because AI basically requires data, right? So I mean, so if you're in the industry where it's very data rich, right, then that's going to be the one that's AI is going to be used, right? Because you can do it, right? You're able to do it, right? Yeah.
Can you give an example of what kind of industry would that be where it's so much data rich?
Sure. I mean, I certainly, from, I would say, the technology giants, right, the social medias and the search engines, right? So there's lots of data in those industries, right? So I think so those are, I would say that, the usual suspect, right? I mean, so I think the ones that are going to be impacted most, I would say, like in the future, right, are ones that traditionally they are not, a very data rich industry, but in the future, they somehow switch and have a focus in collecting data, right? Those are going to be the one that's going to be up and coming, right? So we know that social media and search engines they are going to be the innovators of AI,
Correct.
because they have the data
So much
to
data.
train the AI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for example, like automobile industry, right? They're traditionally, cars are not made to collect data
Data. Right.
or to generate data, right? So I would say that, automotive industries are starting to collect a lot of data. So I think in the future they're going to be heavily impacted by AI, and certainly industry that generates a lot of data. For example, in the financial industry, right? Mobile payments and all those digital
Right.
finance, they start to, when people start to use their digital device to do business, to manage their finance, right? Then it generates a lot of data, right? So those are also, I would say, industry that potentially is going to be heavily impacted by AI in the near future.
Right. Excellent. Let me ask a follow-up on that then. What are your thoughts on the self-driving cars? They're trying to become autonomous as, every day passes. What do you think, Tesla and Polestar and Waymo and others, how long do you think they will become fully autonomous?
Well, I think they're, in terms of the technological aspect of it, I think that they're almost ready, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Like there's nothing that would stop a self-driving car
Wow.
from being on the street. Aside from the fact that I think there's legal issues, I think it's more of the non-technological issue that's preventing these technology from being in our everyday life. So there's so it's like one of those things that if there wasn't a need, right, people are a little more cautious, right? If there wasn't, if there wasn't, for example, if there wasn't a pandemic, right, people would not probably go experiment mRNA vaccine, DNA vaccine, or they would basically produce vaccine the traditional way, right, using dead kind of viruses and all that, right? So these are, I think, the similar thing, right? If there wasn't a some kind of absolute necessity, right, to push to the adoption of this autonomous vehicle, people are a little more cautious, right? They wanted to make sure all the regulations are there, laws are there, to make sure people are safe, right? So yeah, but in terms of technology, I think they can be. If today there's something happen that require us to have autonomous vehicle out there running, it could. I think it can very possibly happen.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. What sorts of new jobs or new industries do you think will be created in the future, in the field of or because of AI?
Well, a lot. I
Yeah.
would say, lots of jobs will be created, but I would say that there will be a lot of jobs that I would say is more of the same job as before, but using new technology, right?
Right.
These are kind of, I would say that they're new job in the sense that they're new job title, right?
Right.
But they're really the same job,
Right.
using a new technology, right? Using AI technology or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Historically, right, before the car was invented, right? You have a coachman, right, that
Right.
drive a horse carriage, right? And there was no taxi driver, right?
Right.
But after the car was invented, right, instead of a coachman driving a horse carriage, that carries people around from point A to point B, you have taxi driver driving a car to get people from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
So you would say that taxi driver is a
A
new
new
job
job.
title.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's a new job title, but I
Right.
think the nature of the job is still, driving some vehicle, right, to get
Right.
people from A to B, right?
Yep.
So that the function of that job
Right.
is actually, I would say remain pretty much the same, right?
Right.
There are certain needs in the society and that need to be fulfilled. I think, those needs are probably still going to be the same needs, right?
Right.
Whether you have a new technology such as AI or not, right?
Yeah.
So I think there will be a lot of new job title, in the sense of that, you'll be doing the same kind of job, but using a new technology such as AI.
Correct.
But as a result, you get a new job title.
Yes.
So it sounds like a new job, but it's not really a
New job. Yeah.
right? Yeah. I think there's certainly that, but there's also, I would say, new jobs being created as well, right? I think I think a lot of people worry about, AI displacing jobs. I think certainly
Right.
there is some job that's going to be
Displays. Yes.
displaced.
Yeah.
But I think with every technological invention, like in the history of human, I mean, in the short term, these technological inventions always, disrupts the job market, right?
Correct.
But in the long term, they always create more
Create
jobs.
more. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for example, like I would say that, like in terms of AI, right? I mean, certainly in the future, you probably, since AI needs a lot of clean and good data, you have data cleansers, right? You have algorithm tester, validator, you have translator that translates the algorithm to the business, right? So
Right.
there's lots of, I would say, the new job that's created because, is needed because of this new technology, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's some of the evolution of old job in using new technology, but there's also this new job that's been created, right? I mean, one example that's, really crazy, there are actually people who, do their job, as an emoji translator, because today there's so many
Right.
emojis out there, right? So,
Yes.
uh, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So,
I got the gist. Yes.
yeah.
Can I digress just a little bit?
Sure, of
A few
course.
weeks ago, I've seen something like in Sweden, they have already started testing that the real driver would be sitting remote and he would be
Hmm.
driving a vehicle. So it's like it sounds like a fully autonomous truck that he's driving, but he's driving it remotely. How amazing is
Hmm.
that? I mean, do you know or have you heard about it? What technology is that and how is it possible? And
I've not heard of that particular instantiation of driving a truck, remotely. But I have heard,
Mm,
human control
right,
robots remotely. Yeah, I believe it's in Japan. There's actually a restaurant where the waiter, the wait staff are basically controlled by people remotely. And
wow,
interestingly, they actually, yeah, because interestingly, okay, they actually hire people who are not able to work in the sense that they are disabled, right? But
right,
they
right,
could talk, they're friendly people, right? They could, so they could help you take order, control robot to get you food and all the stuff, right? So it actually created this job for people who
amazing,
are, not able to be employed in this domain previously.
correct,
So I think, yeah, in a sense that, yeah, it's robotic. It has probably some levels of intelligence. Avoiding kind of collision and all that stuff. But I
mm,
think that the more cognitive side of things, such as a human interaction, the ability to kind of listen to, maybe you didn't quite say the menu item quite correctly, right? The AI probably would not be able to figure out what you really
mm,
want, but then a human could ask, right, interact and really figure out, or if you know the menu, you could figure out,
exactly,
maybe this is what you want, right? And you could. So I think, like, there are lots of, I would say, things that humans are doing better than machines, right? I think
right,
in the future there will be definitely a world that's actually a collaboration between human and machine, where
machines,
we
yeah,
each does our part, where we could provide the most value. So
right,
yeah.
right, absolutely wonderful, yeah. So then let's just go a little more beyond than that sort of future and explore the field of AGI, which I always wanted to ask you was what is your opinion on AGI? And I mean, there are a lot of questions on it, but if you can just begin on it, I will then ask you some follow-up.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to come. I mean,
Yeah,
it's inevitable, right?
right.
And I think it's going to come sooner than we think. Like I
Okay.
would say that probably in the order of a few decades. Like it will be here.
Wow.
I mean, it's yeah.
Mm,
I mean, so the thing is that, like, we as a human race are extremely bad, I would say,
right.
estimating the speed at which things happen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say, just I mean, okay, I would just say that, like, we are extremely bad at understanding the exponential process. Okay,
Right.
like, so anything that's exponential, and then we
We
have
do
a
not.
hard time grasping it. Like, it's like, like, for example, like, I would say in the more recently, right, with the pandemic, right? I mean, it's an exponential process, right? People
Exactly.
just don't say, it's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna be a big deal, right? But when it comes, it's a tidal wave that just, if you don't prepare for it, it's a bit too late, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Mm,
yeah. So I think similarly, I think these type of artificial general intelligence, it builds on previous kind of technology, right? So it
Right.
has this cumulative compounding effect,
Effect
right?
to it.
So yeah, so essentially these intelligent characters, evolve in exponential rate, right? So since we are very bad at estimating
Right.
how fast that these rates actually evolve, right? I mean, yeah, so it's sooner than we know it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great answering that because I was about to ask you, would it going to be like 50 years, 100 years, or and some people are really scared about it because they think that, AGI is going to kill all the humans, and I don't believe that it's going to happen because the the last switch or is always going to be in the hands of the biological intelligent creature, which is us. But let me ask you then, what is your opinion on the fact that I've heard it in some of the podcasts and from some scientists as well, is that this is going to be our last invention because AGI is going to be so strong that you do not have to then, as humans, invent anything. What do you think about it?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think that, I mean, you could say that, so let me just get back to this notion of kind of what does it mean to have an exponential kind of rate of intelligence, right?
Right.
I mean, it really comes from the fact that when you have something where the rate of change is kind of proportional to that thing, right?
Hmm.
So whenever you could write down a differential equation
Hmm.
where the rate of change is proportional to the amount, right? The solution of the exponential equation is a general exponential. Okay.
Right. Mm.
So when something is actually, when the rate of something is, for example, like compound interest, right? The rate is actually, proportional to the amount they actually, then you actually grow exponentially, right? So compound interest, same thing as, viral spread, right?
True.
And lots of other, I would say, natural processes
True.
are somewhat of exponential because of that, right? So
Mm.
it's building on existing accumulative on the previous, yeah. So I think, like, you in that respect, you could say that, a human is certainly exponentially more, intelligent than an ant, right?
Yes, that's right.
Like,
Yeah.
so, but hey, like we I mean, because precisely because we are very often built upon our new inventions are built upon the previous inventions, right? So this again, this cumulative compounding effect, right? And
Right.
yet we as human, we still constantly need to invent and innovate, to solve the problem around us. So I think that, just because, you have AGI that's exponentially smarter than us, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the last invention. Like, I think there's still going to be lots of, invention that, because I guess that the real challenge is that, like, the world and the environment that we live in is constantly evolving, right? And
Right.
that's something that, when you have such a evolving environment, right? It could disrupt. It doesn't really matter how intelligent you are. Your intelligence can be completely irrelevant.
True. True.
All it could be made completely irrelevant with this complete change of the environment, right? So
That's a
so
really
yeah.
awesome point. Can you build on that? I
Mhm.
mean, what do you mean by, the changing environment and how does that impact intelligence and what does it mean?
I mean, you could train. I mean, a lot of people today would say that, okay, I use a deep learning
Yes.
algorithm, the most sophisticated, deep learning algorithm to build a model, right? And if that model may be very, very smart, and if it's actually not able to kind of have this feedback and learning from the feedback, then basically it's not able to adapt to new kind of situations, right? And these type of
Right.
algorithm is actually still somewhat, the model is somewhat static, even though the model has a lot of parameters, it's able to handle a lot of things, but if the world completely changes, right? Basically,
Mm.
it won't be able to adapt because it's not trained under this new environment, right?
Uh-huh.
But
Right.
I think a best example to illustrate the power of this adaptive system is I would say Darwin's famous quote. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people say that Darwin says, survival of the fittest. In
Yes.
fact, he didn't. He
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
say that.
exactly. That's a myth.
He actually say that, it's not the strongest species that survive.
Right.
It's not even the most intelligent species that survive.
Right.
It's actually the most adaptable
Right.
that actually survive.
Yeah.
Right. So so this ability to adapt to the changing environment is actually what allow you to kind of, essentially survive and evolve through, right? Because
Right. Right.
through these changes in the environment, because the environment is constantly changing, right? I mean, you
Mm.
could be super smart or super strong, right? But if the environment completely changes,
It doesn't
it could
matter.
render your
Right.
strong, your strength or intelligence completely irrelevant. Right?
Mm.
So yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah. Mm. Cool. Then I have this question from you about the same thing. I think I read somewhere where Professor Michio Kaku, famous
Mhm.
theoretical physicist, he said something about the fact that in the future, instead of sort of what we see in the movies or in the fictional, articles or topics, we should not fight with the AI in the future because they're going to be so strong, controlling each and every part of our lives, is that we should merge with them. By merging with them means, sort of saying that how does it hurt for a biological to adopt a lot of artificial intelligence inside us, something like Elon Musk doing with the Neuralink, and maybe in the
Mhm.
future where we will sort of merge with them. What is your opinion about that?
Well, I do agree. I mean, there's no point, in fighting with AI.
Right.
Yet I would say, the existential threat is real. I
Yeah.
mean, I do agree that, like there's
Oh, so you believe that
there,
there is an existential threat
I,
because of
I do
AI?
believe there is existential threat.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do believe that.
Right.
I mean, it's not because, I think it's probably not because AI might destroy us. It's probably
Right.
because human may destroy ourselves using
Right.
AI. I think that's an existential threat to us. And I think that, if there is a reason that AI might want to destroy us, it's because, they learned it from human, probably.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think that, today, if you look at it, like, we AI learn today through data, right? But
Right.
who are the people who generated those data that the AI learned from?
It's the
It's
humans. Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
it's the human, right?
Yeah.
It's the human, right? So basically, like, to ensure that AI don't, decide to destroy us, I
Right.
think that the best way to ensure that is to make sure that we are better humans,
Right.
is to
Exactly.
make sure that we actually exhibit the human quality, the, being good, empathic humans, right?
Right.
Human beings. And I think that's actually the best way to make sure the AI learns and understand what it means to be a human, right? I think
Mm.
if every time when we encounter competition, our decision model is that we will just, wipe out our competitors and kill off our competitor,
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
the AI will learn this decision, this way of decision, right? This is
Right.
how humans decide, right? So this
Right.
is the natural way that decision works. So,
Right.
they will just come to maybe then very likely that if they come to competition with human, then the first the solution that they will come to is probably, to wipe out human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's, yeah. So yeah,
Mm.
I think we have to start thinking, that we are essentially, think of it as we are a role model or
Yes.
example, to the AI. Their AI is essentially our digital children.
Right.
We need to be a role model to
Yeah.
teach them what it means to be a good human, right?
Right.
And not just, because we could, so we bully other people,
Mm.
right? If AI could, then they're gonna,
They will bully
come
us
back and
back.
bully us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So I think, yeah, I think this is something that we need to evolve ourselves to be better humans,
Right.
as well.
Great point. Yeah, exactly. Then let me ask you something, that I thought that I would, when we will meet, is because when we say that, it's a general intelligence, it's gonna do things by itself. It doesn't need to be taught. It is so self fulfilling. It is such an intelligent tool by itself that it can discover things by itself. And what is the bar of it? Like, I mean, because my point is that when you say it's an exponential intelligence, then there
Hmm.
should that just like our universe. I mean, there's no end to it. How would you quantify it? How would you say that, it is 100,000% more intelligent than human? What is the bar? What is the metric for it?
Well, I wouldn't use that way, right? Because so this is the thing that, like, why I would say that humans don't quite understand these exponential processes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so, I would say that the coronavirus spreads with exponential rate, right? So
Yes.
does any other virus.
Right.
So does any, I would say, a flu or any other things, right?
Mm.
It's exponential rate. So it's that rate that matters, right? So that rate, if you actually look at it, so exponential, if you draw the exponential curve, right, and
Right.
they kind of have this exponential, I mean, so different rate essentially is it's a different kind of steepness of this exponential
Yes.
curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at any given time, right, if you take a look at it at the early time, right, this exponential rate may just be a little bit smarter than you, maybe a little bit higher than you, right?
Right.
Maybe only like 5%, 10%, but over time this gap gets bigger and bigger, right?
Right. Mm.
So it's the rate at which they're evolving that determines how far apart we're gonna get. I mean, so in the future, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you look at it it's not like a fixed percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the near future, it may be a small like 10%, 50%, or 100%. But if you look at it, 100 years from now, it could be a million percent. It could be so much more. So it's that gap actually gets widened,
Right.
right, over time,
So
right?
just like
So
human evolution, it's going to be an evolution as well for the
yep.
intelligence. Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So it's like you can ask the same question as how much more intelligent is a human compared to an ant, right? I
Right.
mean, I think or how much more smarter is a human compared to a monkey or a chimpanzee or
Right.
something like that, right? I mean, I think early on, right? I mean, in the evolution of human, I would say that we may not be that smart, right? But
True.
over time, right? I mean, you know, over a few hundred years or thousands or
Yep.
years of evolution, right? Then because the we built upon our previous knowledge and
Knowledge. Yeah.
our innovation, right? So that the exponential would take off, right? Eventually, they will actually the gap goes wider and wider. So it goes from like 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, 80%. Like it goes bigger and bigger, right?
Mm.
This gap, and eventually it becomes over 100%. It would be like 2x, 4x, 8x. So it grows exponentially that way.
Right. Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, the next one is so like in terms of getting into the business part of AI, let me ask you this question about what PROS is doing and your role in evolving PROS and the AI there. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Pros is a company that essentially help other company monetize more efficiently and more effectively, right?
Mhm.
Using, I would say like two, we offer like two sets of tool as a software as a service on our platform.
Right.
One is the pricing tool, and then the other one is a sales efficacy tool. And basically the pricing tools are there to help company price more optimally, right?
Mm.
So that they could monetize better. And the sales efficacy tool essentially enable the sales process, to be more efficient and more effective as well, right? So, and what makes these tools work and work so well is the AI behind it, right?
Mm.
And so that's kind of part of my role is to make sure that those AI works and
Right.
gets infused into our product
Right.
solution and our platform. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. So then a follow up on that is that so what is your opinion on companies like Pros and others in the same field adopting AI in their operations and imbibing it into their business models, being AI at the core? I mean, does founders and decision makers do they know that what they're building eventually? Because I heard the talk from Simon Sinek one time where he says only Apple on the planet knows, their why. Why are they building what they're building? Does all these companies, these successful startups and all, do they know what they're doing? Because it can be really great for our civilization, but it can be the other way around as well. So, what's your take on that?
Well, at first, I think it's a good thing, right? I think it's a good thing that companies are adopting AI and
Right.
embedding AI in their business model. I think that, mainly because I think that business today, it's, I would say, so antiquated. And I would say
Mm.
there's so many things in business today that's so inefficient. And certainly AI can help a lot of this business to operate more efficiently, right? And therefore reduce costs, improve customer
True.
experience, and pass on those benefits to the consumer, right?
Right.
So I think that is a good thing. But in terms of like, do the decision makers
Yeah.
really know those AI? I mean, I would say that no. I mean, but my counter question to you is like, do you think they need to know? I mean,
Yeah.
frankly, I don't know if they need to know in
Yeah.
order to, to leverage this AI effectively, right? It's like, do you need to know, everything about how a car works inside and outside, all the engines and all the electronic, all the, thermodynamics of a car, right? I mean, so do you need to know that in order to make good use of a car? I mean,
I
probably
understand.
not. I mean,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
yeah. So I
But
think similar argument would apply.
to here
I
as
mean, I
well.
think it would be great if they do know it, but even if they don't, I mean, they could still leverage it in a way that's, I would say, beneficial to the consumer, beneficial to the business, right?
My point was a little bit more philosophical in the term. Think about ants when they're building something, as a colony for themselves. They know what they're doing, why they're doing, why they are climbing to that ant hill, and why they are digging hole in the ground. And eventually, they know what's gonna happen to them. Either they're gonna die because they did not find a spot, or some other insects might eat them. Uh,
Hmm.
and historically, we have seen that, we as humans build a lot of things like nuclear bombs, and not saying that it
Hmm.
is same as AI or anywhere close to it, because AI is far more better in terms of providing it so many benefits in healthcare, pharma, in all sorts of industries. We build slowly and steadily like ants. No offense to us humans, but we slowly and steadily build all these things for several years and centuries, and then eventually it becomes a monster, and then we realize that, what have we done? And then we sort of start fighting for it, whether it is land or resources or whatever. So if you can just talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, well, I mean, to answer this question is quite challenging. I would
Yeah.
say that, like, it's one of these, I would say, things that you won't know
Right.
until much, much later, right? I
Yes.
mean, think of a time when you have to make a decision in your life.
Mm.
I mean, I would think of why don't you tell me, I'll ask a question to you. Tell me a major decision that you make in your life in the past,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Why don't
For
you
a,
tell me
for a,
that?
for example, I moved to United States back in 2010s for my studies. Yeah. So that
Okay,
was one of the biggest decisions of my life. Yeah.
right, 2010, right?
Yeah.
So when do you realize that is a right decision or is a wrong decision? How much how much later do you realize that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely the right decision, right? I'm sure that the very next day that you make that decision, you are probably not sure,
No,
right?
exactly. Yeah. It was the time that gave all the answers. So immediately short term, I was like, what the heck have I done? But then longer term, if I see it after so many years, yeah, I've made a great decision because I educated myself more and learned a lot of things. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so I think that this time horizon has a huge impact on what we
Right.
perceive to be, good or bad
Yep.
or right or wrong.
Yep.
So I would say that, yeah, AI certainly, I think in the short term, in our kind of foreseeable kind of, future that we
Future.
could
Mm.
grasp, right? I mean, I would say in the few years or something, I would say business typically operate in the quarterly, right? I mean, so for entities like that, right? Or, I think it's a good thing, right? I think these AI help them, be operate more efficiently, more effectively, right? But in the long term, it's we actually don't know. I mean,
Right.
I don't think we can know. It's one of
Right.
those things that we won't know. I mean,
It's like
yeah. I mean,
predicting
a
the
lot of
future. Yeah. Mm.
yeah. I mean, I mean, well, it's not. It's more than just predicting the future, right?
Right.
It's kind of, I would say, whether something is the right choice or the wrong choice. I mean, so okay, say you made an investment, right? I mean,
Right.
to I don't know, you buy some stock or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know it's a good investment or a bad
Exactly.
investment, right?
Yeah.
You won't know until much later,
Right.
right? You won't know, and maybe even at some time you thought it was good investment, right? And later on, you find it's bad investment, but and then after a while, you become good again, right?
Yes.
So it's one of those things that the time horizon, that you look at, it actually changes how your perspective on
Uh-huh. Yes.
what is good and what's bad, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so I think, you know, yeah, I mean, like the example that you give of building a nuclear bomb, it may be scary, and I think that's something that we as a human race need to learn to
Right.
to deal with, like and learn to reap the benefit and control the damage, right? So we have, United Nations and all this kind of, I would say, we created check and balances, right, to ensure that these people who are in power to use these technology don't use it kind of foolishly, right? And and yet we can actually harness its benefit as well, right? Creating
Right.
nuclear power, it's a fairly clean energy, right? But it needs to be used and safely, right? In a way that's don't result in a leak or anything like that, right?
Catastrophic.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it could be very catastrophic,
Right.
right? But I think that if you put the, I would say, enough safety kind of
Mm.
precaution around it, it is actually generating a lot of power
Right.
for powering lots of homes, yeah. So it can be a good thing,
Right.
right? So
It just depends
yeah,
on how you would use it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Excellent. Yeah. Great, great. Um, just being a little devil's advocate, I mean, I have nothing against AI, but if our future
It's
generations,
okay if you're against AI. So you're entitled to your perspective.
right, if our future generations might be listening to this podcast whenever they are, like after 50 years or 100 years, they might say, yeah, both of them were discussing the right thing, or both of them were just, it was just their perspective at that time. So let me ask you this then. Can we stop AI now? And will there?
No.
No. Okay.
The answer is no. Clearly no.
Okay. So it's not in our hands. I mean, it has spread so much that, the benefits of it and the real benefits of it, that yeah, it's not logical to stop it.
It's the economic advantage, right? I mean,
Right.
so basically, the economic advantage provided by AI
Yeah.
will drive further adoption of AI, right? I mean,
Right.
why wouldn't you? I mean, it's like,
Exactly.
if you have a car, why would you go back to using a horse carriage? I mean, you
Right.
wouldn't, right?
Right.
I mean, you could say that, okay, let's not innovate on cars anymore because it generates so much, pollution. But then you invent an electric car, right?
Right.
You invented something else that would, it's not the problem with the car, right? So it's the gas that it produces
True.
that creates problems. So let's innovate on that, right? So the car is a good thing, right?
Right.
So I think the same thing. AI, provides a lot of benefits. So AI is gonna be around no matter what, right? So, but AI may cause some of the problem, right?
Right.
But let's fix those problems and not just say
True.
because AI causes those problems, let's throw away AI, right? That's
No.
the same thing as saying that, okay, like cars creates greenhouse gas, so let's get rid of the car and go
Right.
back to horse carriage, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of just ridiculous. I
Yes.
would say that if cars create greenhouse gas, right? Yeah, then let's fix the greenhouse gas problem. Let's
Correct.
keep the car, but fix it. We have electric cars now,
Right.
so that's the mentality that we should have, and
That's an
not to say
excellent
that, okay,
analogy.
AI caused some problem
Yeah.
and we just throw away AI, right?
Excellent
So
analogy and great point. So then, is it true that, in future we will become immortal as our digital copy will live forever? Like, using AI and maybe even more advanced technology, that, our future generations will be able to still be able to talk. I mean, we have seen so many science fiction movies. They've shown they're talking to their 6 or 7 generations back grandfather, talking like as they're talking. So what do you think about it?
well, I think that I think company that actually are already company today that are digitizing
Yeah.
the disease.
Right.
Like for, I would say, popular characters where they actually have lots of, I would say, digital data left behind. They actually could mimic those characters, like a celebrity or something like that, and do a mimicry of those celebrity, and have them interact with humans. So I think this technology already exists, right? But whether that is really truly a digital copy of us, I think that's arguable. I mean, I
Mm.
think that's just using the available digital data to kind of re-render a manifestation of
Oh.
this person or this celebrity in a digital world, right? And I would say that it's a mimicry. It may look like him or her. It may look, it
Right.
may talk like him or her. But is that really her? Him or her? I would say that probably not. Right? It's a mimicry,
Right.
but probably a good mimicry. Probably not. It probably doesn't have the entire experience that he have, the memory
Right.
that he has. Right? So yeah. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. The next question I wanted to ask you is about, what do you think? Are we living in a simulation? And how can we know that we are or we are not inside a simulation? Like Elon Musk mentioned some time back, we are in a simulation.
Well, I would think that I think Elon Musk says that it is possible that we live in
Right.
a simulation, right?
Yes.
But the odds are quite small. The
Right.
odds are, I believe he said 1 in a billion or something like
Yes.
that, right? It's a small. I think that there are actually other people, like Neil deGrasse
Yeah.
Tyson or something. I think that they actually kind of project and believe that the probability is actually higher. And I agree. I agree with both Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right.
Now, however, I would say that these are probability, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they are the reality, right?
Right.
So even though you have 20% probability, it doesn't mean that so let's say tomorrow has 20% chance of raining, right? But it doesn't mean that tomorrow will definitely rain. That we
Yeah.
are sort of having is likely, is possible, but it doesn't mean that we are, right? So I think that first we have to make that distinction, But
Right.
so that aside, I would say that even if we are in some kind of simulation, it would probably be indistinguishable from reality
The
as we know
reality.
it,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, so it probably doesn't matter. Right?
Right.
It probably
Yes.
doesn't matter. I would say that the only implication is that probably a philosophical one, right?
Exactly.
Probably
Yeah.
so who actually created this simulation that we're in,
Right.
it's probably, if it's a simulation, it's probably why would it simulate us, right? It's probably some kind of future, more evolved, advanced versions of us, right? So I
Right.
think that may be a comforting, right? Or you could say that the other way, right? Maybe it's God-like
Yeah.
creature, right? or being, right?
Right.
So they created this simulation for human being, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think you could go one way or the other, but either way, I think it's a little bit philosophical, right? So but there is an implication that the question of, if it is a simulation, so who is the programmer, right?
Correct.
Is that us, or is that some other higher power being, right?
Right.
So if it's us, right, then we why do we use kind of reality? I mean, I think we could
Right.
have simulate a reality that's probably a lot more interesting, right? I mean, with better physics, where we can fly, and why kind of create gravity
Yeah.
that limits our movement as such, right? So I think that there's questions like that I would pose, right? I mean, but I would say that certainly it's possible. Yeah, I would say that it's possible, but we probably won't know. And since we can't distinguish it from reality, it probably doesn't matter. The only
Right.
thing that it matters is how we kind of it's the philosophical question of who is a programmer. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes. So, based on your experience, if you're given a chance, let's say Dr. Michael Wu is made the president of the world, just for an example, how do you, or
I don't
what do
think
you
that's
change?
likely.
what would you want to change in AI today so that it changes the direction of something that you would like to change it, something that you would believe that'll help for the greater part of humanity?
I see. Anything I want to.
Um, yeah, anything, just anything that you think is not going on right now, and you think that it can possibly be done, and then that'll be great for us, for everybody.
Okay, I mean, if there's anything that I could change, I mean, I would instill human values in AI.
uh,
Like our the moral codes that we live by, the
yeah.
ethical values of human. I think these are what I would do. I mean, I don't think I think that's I think one is that like I think these are very difficult for AIs to learn from data.
Right.
Okay, it's very challenging for us for AI to actually learn what is these ethical values and what does it mean to be human, to be empathic. It's not just being self-conscious. I think there's a lot more than that. Some people say that reduce humans to just being a self-conscious being, right? I mean, I think that's you know
Yeah.
degrades a human being. I would say it's probably a
True.
lot more than that. Yeah, I think that these ethical, moral values are hard to learn because the objective is actually very hard to specify.
Right.
Because these ethical values, I would say it's not so black and white like you know like the law, like the legal system, like the legal construct, right? I mean it's I think it is possible
Right.
to create AI that's perfectly compliant to the existing laws that we have, right? It's actually very time consuming to do that. It's not easy, but it's possible, right?
Right.
Because we can actually, create an objective where it's actually whenever the solution of the AI falls outside of this kind of legal construct, the cost function becomes infinite, right? So that basically they will be forced to explore only within the legal construct, right? The legal confine.
Right.
So even though that takes time, right? But I think it's to encode all the laws in there, but I think it's possible to do that, right? But with ethical value, it's actually a lot harder because these are not so black and white. They're not just, sometimes there's gray area. You have to look at the context. It's not so it's hard to specify objective function. So it's hard for AI to learn and optimize, therefore, right? Because most AI basically operates, on optimizing some kind of objective, right? So if you can't specify the objective, the AI can't, it's very hard for it to learn, right? And moreover, I would say that the data is also hard to obtain. Right? The data around like what is moral, what is ethical, it's hard to obtain because yeah, I think it's the one of the discussion that we discussed earlier. It changes, I would say, according to your time horizon that you're looking at, right? So very often that these if there's any data, right, it typically we won't know the impact, the really good or bad impact, right? If until very very long time, yeah, very very much later, right? It will be a long time until we get those data, right? So yeah, it's hard to specify the objective, hard to get the data. So it's very hard for AI to learn what is moral, what is ethical, right? So I think that but I think it's absolutely important, right, for AI to do this, because as I said earlier, I think it may even be existentially kind of beneficial to human because if AI actually learn from the data that humans generate, right? Basically, they would decide to wipe us out if we ever come into competition with them, right? So,
Right.
yeah. So I think there's to have this ethical moral value of what it means to be human, to be kind and to be empathic and be passionate, to be I don't know even to the extent of being environmentally conscious, right? All these are kind of I would say good human value. I would find some way to instill into the
AI.
AI.
How hard
Yeah.
is it then, or how much percentage have humans successfully done that, putting something like an emotion of, being ethical, being morally good, and all those things that humans possess into an algorithm, so that the
I don't
machine,
think it's being done.
okay. Does it
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, that is I would say that you mentioned like emotion, right? I
uh,
think that there are actually lots of I say institutions studying emotion, like AI
right,
emotion, all that. I think that so emotion is actually I would say data is actually easy to get. I mean, I
right,
could get am I sad? Am I happy today? Collect data around my environment to understand what makes me sad. I think emotion is actually a lot easier,
right.
but I think being ethical and being moral, it's
Mm.
actually you that you know
How will you
uh, yeah how
quantify?
would you what decision you make in an ethical dilemma, right? Something like that,
Right.
right? I mean so these are much more challenging questions than
Questions,
just
yeah.
emotion. It's not just emotion, right? I
Right.
think it has to do with really understanding what is good and what is bad, right? I mean, I think that, that this may sound like kind of, again, a little bit philosophical, but I would say that a lot of the moral code and ethical values of the human race are kind of, I would say, things that we learn, for thousands of years and stand the test of time, right? I think these
Right.
are, yeah, so over a long time horizon, these are what's kind of important to human. Like I would say the golden rules, right? Do to other unto do unto other as you would
Do it to
wish to
yourself.
be done to yourself,
Yeah.
right? So I think these are things that yeah, if you don't, I mean, yeah, if you don't wish that another competitor wiped you out, right? Then don't wipe them out, right?
Correct.
Don't,
Yeah.
just like, simple as that. It's a then AI would learn to yeah, if you come to competition with him, that maybe there's another way, right? Maybe there's a way through engagement, negotiation, right, to come up with a balance rather than just wipe out your competitor,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, maybe we can all coexist. So that's the willingness to explore that alternative. It's and recognize that there may be some alternative, and the desire to explore it is important, right? And not just come to the simplest solution, right? The simplest solution is to just wipe you off, right? and that's usually the wrong. I would say the
path.
yeah,
Yeah.
the worst solution, right? The simplest solution is probably simply very often is the worst solution, in terms of in the context of these kind of moral and ethical value. Yeah.
Right. Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wu. I mean, I'm pretty sure just like me, lots of millions of curious minds who would listen to it forever would definitely benefit from your talk. And yeah, I would also request you whenever in the future you have some time, we will meet again and go with some of the most burning questions or topics on AI.
Sure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please support this podcast by liking, commenting, sharing it with your friends, and also subscribing to this channel. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.